Hope you're not too uncomfortable down there. Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on. Yeah, it just occurred to me that that would actually make sense if someone's like in a stuffed into a drawer watching this on their phone or something. But to be fair, it's a I did it because it's a line from the movie. Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming your way to do a CD review, which is something I don't often do on this channel, but because this release I regard it as being quite a historic release, although as we'll get into, it's not the most amazing necessarily thing in the entire world. It's definitely the first time that this has been, even in this kind of a situation or in this kind of a presentation, has been available in anything at all whatsoever, to my knowledge. I thought that this is something definitely worth having and definitely worth talking about, stopping on by to review the Waxwork Records, in this case CD release of, what are they calling it? The Texas Chain Saw Massacre original motion picture score, composed and performed by Tobe Hooper and Wayne Bell. I was at some kind of a specialty shop or whatever the hell you want to call it in a mall, and I came across a vinyl record version of this, and I'm like, holy crap. As you may know, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre from 1974 is definitely one of my favorite all-time films of all time. Definitely one of the best North American horror films ever made. But this video is, you know, obviously about talking about this historic soundtrack, in this case CD release of the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. And, you know, score, I mean, you know, music, I mean, it's not really a score. I don't know what the definition of a film score is, but I definitely wouldn't call it music. I would call this tonalities. I wouldn't say that this CD is full of music. I'd say it's full of audio tonalities. And what happened when they were, you know, making the Texas Chain Saw Massacre is Tobe Hooper and someone by the name of Wayne Bell got together, and pots and pans. There's a list of a lot of the stuff they used to make the tonalities for this film. There's a list of it, I think, in the, you know, the booklet for the CD release. They just got pots and pans together, filled some with water, filled some with less water, more water, all kinds of just random stuff to make what is arguably one of the most, I mean, probably one of the best film. I hesitate to call it a film score. Film, like I say, I don't know what the definition of film score is. Film tonalities soundtracks in all history, and it's just like, it's so crazy how I can listen to this, which is dialogue free fortunately, and know exactly what's going on at every single moment. And it's so strange because it's not like, you know, yeah, so you can listen to, you know, the track which is you know, everyone that dies is X, so Jerry X, Leatherface worries. I can listen to that and know exactly what's happening, you know, when Pam comes out of the cooler, when Jerry gets it, when Leatherface is running to the window, when he's sitting in front of the window. Like, it's just so crazy how you can listen to these, what I'd call tonalities, and know exactly what's going on. So, what, you know, one thing I'll say about this release is, it's just, I guess I didn't really realize until you listen to it by itself without the dialogue and stuff, of how much, like, not necessarily music this is, but it's, as I said, it's tonalities. But what amazing tonalities they are. I don't think anywhere in the booklet it says anything about, like, you know, where the audio for the music, or the, I guess the tonalities I should say, on the CD comes from. I want to say that based on some of the things I'll talk about just in just a bit here, that it's probably just is, you know, regardless of what they say, you know, a lot of the thing to say these days is newly discovered tapes. But I would say, suggest, based on, you know, a little bit more of info, what I'm going to, you know, go on to say is that, you know, this may very well might have come from, just like with the early Friday the 13th CDs that came out in, I don't know what it was, 2009 or 2010, or was it 11 or 12? I don't know when the hell they came out. From La La Land Records, the first, you know, basically Friday the 13th CDs. I think those were basically derived, or the audio from those was basically gotten from the fact that Paramount went back to remaster in 5.1 all of the Friday the 13th movies from 1 all the way. There's no such thing as a movie called Friday the 13th Part 1. That's kind of a pet peeve. From Friday the 13th, the first film, all the way to, you know, Part 8 and Jason Takes Manhattan. They 5.1'd all those, and I think because of, you know, going back to the audio in order to do that, they were able to basically get the music from the movies that way until, like, supposedly recently the tapes were discovered for the original soundtracks of Friday the 13th, and then of course they put out new, you know, La La Land Records put out new CD releases of those, which is now, you know, parts 1, 2, 3, 5, and of course 6. Well, yes, I've got the La La Land Records version of Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, the new Ultimate Cut CD of that, and I'll be reviewing that one of these days as well. But I can only assume, based on the fact, and this is what I'm going to get to, the opening, which on this CD is called Track 1 Main Title, which is obviously, you know, fitting in the case. I was, you know, oh, another thing I should say is when I saw the LP at that specialty shop in the mall, then I'm like, well, God, I'm not an LP guy, so I don't want the LP, but I did go home and I did go on to Apple Music and was delighted to see that the album that was on the LP is on Apple Music, so of course I was able to hear the whole thing that way. And I was disappointed initially with the main titles, the first track, and hearing that, you know, you could hear some of the digging and some of the, you know, the grave digging that's going on, and, you know, sawing this and that or whatever, although I think the audio is a little different than it is in the movie. It's the same basic thing, and I'm like, that led me to think, like, yeah, this must just be this audio must just be taken from the movie soundtrack, maybe music effects track, who the hell knows. But I can't imagine any other reason why. There's at least 3, from what I can remember, instances where some of the sounds from the movie are in this soundtrack CD, and that being the first one. You can at the beginning of track 1, you can hear the digging and sawing and slicing, whatever the hell they're doing when they're digging into the graves at the beginning of Texas Chain Saw Massacre and taking the pictures, and you can hear the camera go click and stuff like that. But once you get past that, then it's just music only for that track. But then the next track, which you can hear sound effects, is, what the hell do they call it on here? Yeah, I guess it's track 3 here. Cuts, Melody, Feed Lot, and Hitchhiker's Razor. You know, the feed lot I can only assume must mean like the cows or whatever, but that's what I'm talking about. Track 3 has, you know, the beginning of track 3, or whenever it's the cows section of the tonalities for that portion of the track, you can hear moo. I don't know why I move back and forth when I do moo, but moo, you know, and some of the mooing that can be heard in the film during that part of the movie as well. So it's kind of like, you know, I can't imagine that those sounds, you know, whoever made this album would actually decide to put those sounds. Like, I guess I can kind of, like, out of all the sounds that you can hear, sounds from the movie that you can hear on this album, like, you know, the digging from the very first track kind of makes the most sense. Like, if you were to, you know, if you were to actually get the original tapes of the tonalities, and why, you know, it's just like, why are you gonna, if they want to hear the digging, like, you can watch the movie to hear the digging. Like, why is the digging there and why is the mooing there? And I think that's wise, because this audio from on this album, be it digital or LP, or in this case CD, I think is just taken from music, or, you know, and or effects track audio that's just, you know, part of the sound effects or soundtracks, you know, the many soundtracks that were layered into, you know, to make the final, you know, audio mix for the movie or whatever. That's just my opinion, because why else would you have, like, the grave digging sounds and, like, the mooing? Like, you don't need the mooing on there. And I'm pretty sure the third and final track that's got sound effects from the movie is track 8 here, which we can see is called Trouble Moon, which is the track where, you know, Sally and Franklin are sitting by the van, honking the horn, going, Jerry! And all that stuff. The beginning of that track, this one's probably the least invasive of all the 3 tracks with more audio from the movie. That track actually starts with, and I think a lot of the beginning of it or whatever has like ambient, you know, and insect sounds of the night. So, you know, that scene takes place at night or whatever, under like that full moon or whatever. So for sure at the beginning of that track, it's like got the ambient insect sound effects as well. And like I say, out of all 3 of these instances where you've got sound effects from the movie, as a part of this soundtrack album of the tonalities. Like, this is the one where it's the least invasive. Being a fan of basically nighttime, some warm weather nighttime sounds, so I actually love that sound of nighttime insects and stuff. So that's why for me, I don't mind the inclusion of that in this track as much as the other stuff. But like the digging, obviously, is like when you want to hear just the tonalities, the grave digging is a little, and the moo, like who the hell wants to, I don't know why I always move when I do moo, but I guess because cows move or what? Cows move, so why wouldn't I move when I go moo? But anyway, yeah, so this one, having the insects, the nighttime insects as a part of this track and the soundtrack tonalities CD or whatever, in my opinion, is the least invasive of all three. But it's kind of a shame, ultimately I think that if they really did, which I don't think they did, got these, these tonalities from newly discovered tracks, like, so you're telling me they just decided to just put in the sound effects from the movie? Like, to me that makes no sense. Like, if you're going to do that, offer a track that's got no, with sound effects and do another track without, because if we want to hear the sound effects of the movie, we're going to watch the movie. I'm pretty sure that the majority of the tonalities that you hear in the movie are on this album. I'm pretty sure that, looking back, some of the stuff that I don't think is on the album is stuff like, when Pam gets caught, or initially when Pam stumbles into what me and Keith call like the bone room, where she stumbles into the room where she sees all the bones and the chicken in the cage hanging from the ceiling and all this and that. Like, I don't think that bit of tonalities is on this album. I know that, Kirk's demise and Pam's, walk up to the house is on there, but I don't think her, like I say, in the bone room, seeing that, and possibly the tonalities that happen as Pam is being caught and dragged in and put on the hook, and, what's his name? Kirk is being sawed up. Like, I don't think those tonalities are on the album. Not 100% sure, but pretty sure they're not. Unfortunately, another bit that seems to be not on the album from what I can hear, unless they reused stuff, which I don't think they necessarily did, but unless this is just reused tonalities from an earlier or later point in the movie, I'm pretty sure the audio or the tonalities of bringing Sally from the gas station back to the house and into the house, all that stuff before she faints, I'm pretty sure, if I'm understanding or listening correctly, that all of those tonalities are not included on this album as well. As we can see, track 12, Sally Awakens for Dinner to the End. Very happy to say that I think that track clocks in at somewhere around like 9 minutes or something. It's basically all of the tonalities from when she wakes up, at the dinner table in the morning or whenever obviously it's the morning of her escape. Everything up until the last moments of the film, wonderfully, featured there. I'm very glad that is there, which seems to be in its full entirety, so that's a dang good thing. And of course, the track that comes after that is End Credits, which is there. I can definitely guarantee, or not guarantee, but I can confirm that is the correct end credits, and as it should be, and definitely the correct tonalities and all of the end credits music. Having watched this movie a bazillion times, I can confirm that that's in fact the correct track. The strangest thing to me about this release is tracks number 9, 10, and 14. Now, these tracks, as we can see, 9 is Distant Disturbance with in parentheses sketch 1. Track 10 is Closer Problem in parentheses sketch 2, and track 14 is Descent in parentheses sketch 3. I have no idea where the tonalities on these tracks come from. I guess it would be like if they claim that this album is sourced from newly discovered tapes. These 3 tracks, I guess, would be the only indicator that might very well be the case. It's very possible that these are tonalities that were not used in the film. I mean, the things that are in the movie and that's on this album, I mean, it's so recognizable, and I know exactly what's happening during those scenes. So, if I'm not recognizing where these three tracks and recognizing where they go, then I'm pretty sure this is stuff that has been formerly unheard, or at least not in the film. So, as I said, like, it's possible that this whole album is sourced from newly discovered tapes, and if that's the case, that could explain why some of the tonalities from the Pam going into the bone room and bringing Sally back from the gas station and going into the house and stuff, that might explain while those tracks are absent, because out of the newly discovered tapes, those sections from those recordings were not discovered among the tapes or something. But it's really strange to not include that stuff, but then include these three tracks, which, as I said, I mean, it's stuff that I can't recognize from the film itself. So, I mean, I guess from a standpoint of like being a fan of the film and in hearing potentially formerly unreleased tonalities from the soundtrack of Texas Chain Saw Massacre, like if you're up for that, you're going to love these tracks. But when I buy a soundtrack, it's more or less like, you want to hear what you've been listening to for decades that's in the movie or whatever. Obviously, like when you're talking about the ultimate cut Friday the 13th soundtracks, and it's more kind of quote-unquote traditional music, like it's cool to hear like never before heard cues that Harry Manfredini did and that were never used in the movie, that kind of stuff, because it's more like, I guess, maybe music. But like hearing never before heard or never used tonalities from Texas Chain Saw Massacre, as much as I love the movie and the tonalities in the movie, like it's like hearing like, if these three tracks are indeed like stuff that was recorded but not used in the movie, I mean, I guess that's not that amazing, because the what makes the tonalities interesting is the fact that they've been a part of your life and they went with the movie for decades, and like hearing tonalities on their own for the first time where you don't even know where they go or what they're recorded for, it's like not a big huge deal to me, in my opinion. And another thing, it's like the placing of these tracks. Like, why not put them all after end titles, which is, of course, the sketch 3 is after the end titles. Why not put this Closer Problem, the Distant Disturbance and Closer Problem and Descent being like, the last three tracks as bonus? It makes no sense to me whatsoever why the Distant Disturbance is track 9 and Closer Problem is track 10, and why, like I say, why are these three tracks, which don't sound like they're anything from the movie, why are they called sketch 1, 2, and 3? Incidentally, I love the cover art. If I was in charge of this project, the cover art would probably look exactly like this. So, kudos to Waxwork Records. I had a reproduction poster of this in my room that I got sometime in 1988 or early 1989 that I got maybe at Suncoast. This is the poster, to me that represents Texas Chain Saw Massacre, Pam on the hook, Leatherface with the chainsaw, and that little scene there. So this is definitely just a really, really great cover. And as I said, if I was in charge of this release, it's pretty much exactly what the cover would look like if I did it. So way to go, Waxwork Records. Taking a look at the back, I mean, it pretty much, I think the same thing can be said for the back. If I was in charge of the back, like this could very well be what I put on the back. This is absolutely fantastic for the back of the album art. Texas Chain Saw Massacre logo up corner top there. Yeah, I think the layout of this is absolutely great. Back of the booklet looks like this. Please feel free to pause and read if you want to. First couple pages of the booklet look like this. Hopefully the images will be good enough for you to pause and read if you want to. You can see there the first page, the instrumentation. So he basically documents what he can remember that was used to make the tonalities for the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Him being Wayne Bell, I would imagine. This is what pages 3 and 4 look like. I didn't look. My eyes at pushing 50 aren't good enough to even read this without a magnifying glass. I can only assume that's the shooting schedule. I think am I seeing pickup shots? Yeah, this is probably like a calendar of the shooting schedule or something. So one can only assume that's the case. Yeah, it's very possible it's the shooting schedule for the movie. But at any rate, the photo that's behind there is really cool. Some hot chick making up Leatherface, and you can almost tell by Marilyn Burns' just physicality there that she's so over this movie. Like, oh my God, her physicality is just like, get me the hell out of here. Pages 5 and 6, just kind of these behind the scenes photos of one of them making up, putting the blood on the Kirk character, and the other one is making what me and Keith call the bone room. This is what the compact disc itself looks like. Very simple. Perhaps I would have done something different, perhaps not, but the whole thing's red with white print. I mean, there's pictures over everything else. I guess you can have just a red and white CD. Nothing wrong with that, I guess. Taking a look at the photo behind where the CD is housed, that's probably the image I'd put there too as well. You take the CD away and it's like, you like his face? So all in all, definitely glad that this release exists. It's a long time coming, nearly, well, more or less 50 years. This CD came out in 2024. So basically took 50 years to come out. So some Texas Chainsaw Massacre fans, unfortunately, might not even be with us anymore by the time the tonalities or the original motion picture, well, I guess they call it soundtrack or score from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out. They might not even be around to experience it, which is just a goddamn shame. I'm kind of grateful that me and Keith are still around to enjoy it. And while it's not a perfect release, and ideally, if you're doing a music soundtrack release, or in this case a tonality soundtrack release, ideally I wouldn't have any of the the audio or the dialogue. There's no dialogue from the movie in this soundtrack, but as I've covered, at least 3 tracks and 3 different instances of audio from the movie is featured on the album, which I know it's not that uncommon, but when you've been waiting decades and decades, for a soundtrack, it'd be nice to have music, or in this case, tonalities only, because, as I said, if I want to hear the sounds, I can watch the movie. But like I say, those 3 mystery tracks of what the hell, I don't know what the hell they are, and I don't know who thought of where to place them. Like if you've got 3 tracks of previously unreleased material, put them at the end as bonus. And they just kind of, it's so weird how they just kind of integrate them onto it, and they don't, they don't say what they are, or it's just weird. To me, that's the most annoying part of the whole album. It's also annoying that some of that, as I said, Pam discovering the bone room and Sally being driven to the the crazy family's house and brought into the house, and that stuff is, from what I can gather, not included on this album. But it's nice to have everything else that is included. And one thing I will say in closing about the quality of it, I was able to listen to it on some speakers that have a decent amount of decent amount of being able to reproduce bass. And I don't know if they would have enhanced this stuff for this release, or if the bass would have been there from the beginning. But if you play this on a speaker that can actually reproduce, put out some decent bass, it's really surprising how much some of like the whoa, 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 how bassful some of the stuff gets. Oh, and that's another thing I want to mention. You might wonder, well, what about the stereo aspect of this release? I mean, how like they turn, like, I don't know, mono movies into stereo? Like, I can only assume that's kind of what's being applied here. I can only assume that this isn't like native stereo. It kind of sounds more like stereo that you take something mono and kind of in the computer try to make it seem stereo. Like if you want to take something mono and put it into the surround rear channels or something, like it kind of opens it up and makes it seem fake stereo. That's probably what most likely was done to this. It doesn't seem like any kind of native true stereo. It seems like stereo that as I said, they're just taking something mono and making it half-ass stereo. But that would be my guess, and I have got no facts to back that up. But based on listening to it, and with 2 obviously right and left speakers, it definitely sounds like that. And as I said, the bass, whether it was there from day one or enhanced for this album release, it's surprising how bassful the album gets as well. So I guess that pretty much does it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video. Hey man, put that knife up. You like his face? I just can't take no pleasure in killing. You hear me? I heard you, but I don't mean much. I was gonna say, go look at it, go look at it. That's Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Part 2 doesn't apply to this CD.